I get to give back to a city who gave me everything. This place is special to me.
One person's poor interaction affects the perception of this career.
We sometimes think we know what they go through every day and what they deal with, and we don't.
What's the biggest misconception around police officers? From South Bend to Evansville and everywhere in between, this is Get In, the show focused on the Hoosier State and the incredible stories happening here today. I'm Nate Spengel, founder of Get Indiana, and I will be your host for today's conversation. All right, folks, Mother's Day is around the corner, and I'm going to help you get prepared. Ditch the Amazon or Target candle and get mom something from Warm Glow Candle Company. They're based out in Centerville, Indiana, and they make some of the best candles I have ever smelled. They have made my house smell unreal. They aren't your average candle that burns out in 5 minutes. Oh no, your mom is going to get tons of use out of this, and every time she lights it, she's going to be thinking about how you are her favorite child. I love the apple cinnamon and the creamy vanilla bean, but my absolute favorite is the blueberry cobbler. It smells just like visiting my grandma's house after she spent all Saturday morning baking. If you've ever driven east down 70, you have probably seen their massive candle where the shop is, but you can also order online and they'll ship them right to your door. I know you're going to get your mom a candle for Mother's Day. Now you can do that and support an awesome Hoosier business in the process. Head to warmglow.com to check out all their amazing scents. Now let's get back to the episode. Today I'm joined by Chief Chris Bailey, a 27-year champion of the Indianapolis Metropolitan Police Department, who has dedicated his life to protecting and improving the community he calls home. An Indianapolis native with deep roots on the west side, his passion for law enforcement is evident in his innovative leadership and commitment to building strong police community partnerships. Today, we're going to get to know the chief, talk through some of the hot topics in the community, and learn how IMPD is thinking about recruiting the next generation of law enforcement officers. Chief, welcome to Get In.
Hey, it's great to be here.
Man, I'm pumped about this one. It's funny. They were outside waiting to get into the studio, and my neighbors kind of popped out. I was like, is everything all right here? And no, yeah, we're just recording a podcast. So not every day do you get two awesome law enforcement officers that stop by the studio. So thanks for coming.
It is so great to be here. I watch you online, so actually to be here and be a part of this is amazing.
Let's go. That's big praise. And I think that a big piece that I wanted to start off is getting to know you, right? So you are now the chief of police for the Indianapolis Metropolitan Police Department. You have been in that role for a year now, but for 27 years, you've been serving the community of Indianapolis. And I think that is a testament to, I would say, generosity to the community, right? Like that's not an easy role to fill for 27 months, let alone 27 years. So take us back. When did you know that you wanted to be a police officer?
Well, first of all, I get to be the chief of the Indianapolis Metropolitan Police Department. I get to serve a community that's done so much for me. So I feel like I'm one of the luckiest people to ever walk the planet. So, but it started for me. I can't not remember a time when I did not want to be a police officer, and I really can't explain that. Like I can't say my dad was, or my grandpa was, or uncles. No, it just something was in me. And there's, Chief Taylor always used to say, the previous chief, this is a calling, and I believe that. I believe that some people are called to certain things, and I was called to do this. I had some great people to look up to, cops that I interacted with as a lifeguard for Indy Parks from about the age 15 to 18. They came in and out of the park, so I saw them. I established a relationship with them. I went on right along starting at 18 with specifically Officer Greg Weber, Officer Don Spiegel. They worked in my neighborhood. They worked on this police department. Both of them worked the street their entire career. Not only did they find me, but I found two of the greatest mentors that a person could ask for looking to get into this world. And so they really drove me to get to this, to get hired. But I've always wanted to be the police, and I can't explain where.
Well, and I do want to touch on one thing that's kind of a funny point that I was kind of like fretting with before. And I was like, do you say cops? Do you say police officers? Like, is one of them more, is like, I didn't want to be like disrespectful and say, okay, so here's like a cop. Like, is there like a terminology that you guys prefer?
No. There's a couple that I don't prefer, but
That's fair.
But cop or police officer, all that's fine.
Amazing. And so you talk about that career progression, right? So working the street versus being a detective versus as you work up, I'm sure there's less time in a car, patrolling and more time, more paperwork, right? Like as you go up. So what's like the traditional progression through a police officer's career?
Yeah, so you start as a recruit officer. You're in training. We pay you the entire time you're in training for 6 months. And so once you graduate from the academy, you go sit with an officer in a car for another 4 months, another month by yourself, Then you're a patrol officer. That's your rank. That's your job. And usually anywhere you're going to be in that patrol call working a beat on one of our 6 districts for at least 3 years.
The 6 districts, can you
So
outline that for us?
I'll go around the clock.
Yeah.
So North District is where we're at now. It encompasses where your studio is. And then if you go clockwise, you have East District, and then Southeast District, Southwest District, Northwest District, and in the heart of our city's downtown.
Got you. Okay, so 1 central core and then 5 districts all around there.
Yes.
And you said that the North District spans pretty far, right? You said from county line to county line across the top?
So about downtown, so old north side, 16th Street approximately, or Interstate 65 on the south, north all the way to Hamilton County, west to approximately Ditch Road, and it kind of zigzags down to Michigan and Crown Hill Cemetery, east to throughout Geist and Lawrence.
Into Lawrence?
Well, it stops at Lawrence as his own jurisdiction, but it'll go around Lawrence to the entire Geist community, so up near Hancock County. So
wow, that's a ton. Of
85,
space.
Approximately 85 square miles just for North District alone. Yeah, we're a big city. People, you forget about that.
And big as in like expansive geography,
miles,
right?
yes.
Yeah, and that's like one of the things that is beneficial to the city of Indianapolis is that you can keep growing and suburbs become more urban, and you keep expanding. But it's also, I mean, a ton of the infrastructure and when you think of districts and things like that, that's a ton to cover. So you take us to, you start as a patrol officer. Yep. And are you out with a partner, patrolling?
Yeah, you don't have we're single person cars, so you don't double up. And there's occasions where you may do that, but 99% of the time,
like for podcast appearances.
Yeah, that's right. I got to have a handler.
Yeah.
You can't go anywhere without.
Absolutely,
yeah, especially me. So you're working a beat in one of the districts, and a lot of people stay more than 3 years, but we don't really let you apply for any other jobs until you at least have 3 years on. So if you want to be a detective, then we want you to have 3 years experience as a patrol officer, working a beat, those type of things.
And what does a day in the life of a patrol officer look like?
You come in at roll call. 5:30 a.m.'s day shift is when it starts. 1:30 is when middle shift starts. 9:30 is when late shift starts. So usually about 10 to 15 minutes. If there's something more, if I come to visit, maybe 30 minutes of time where you're getting instruction. Your supervisors are seeing you. You get the whatever needs to happen of that day, the announcements, and then you go out and you start taking dispatch runs. You do proactive work, traffic stops, investigative work. You do community policing. Stop into businesses, stop into schools. Occasionally weave a lunch or a dinner in there, or a breakfast, a snack or two, and you spend your time serving the community in that way.
I think I probably already know the answer to this, but mostly you're out and about, and then you have to go report. Like if you had to say what percentage of time do you spend answering calls versus traffic stops versus just general observation?
Yeah, most of the work we do is going to be reactive 911 calls. That's our, when someone calls 911 and they need police assistance, we need to be available to do that. That's our primary function. So we are more of a reactive police force, but we do want our discretionary time used appropriately in places, in areas that will reduce crime, that will build trust and community relations, help us serve the community better. But majority of our time, especially patrol officer, is spent responding to things like disturbances or traffic crashes, alarms, the whole gamut of issues.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense, and I can only imagine. I don't know, what's the volume? How many 911 calls come in per day?
About 1 million calls per year.
Holy,
that for our police department. Yeah,
that would keep it'd keep you busy a little bit there. So you do 3 years, and if you're on the path to start pursuing different career paths within the police force, what is that next gig after a patrol officer for 3 years?
We have lots of specialty options within our police department. So you can be, we have proactive teams, so they're still patrol officers, but their day is spent, instead of reacting to 911 calls, they're proactively responding to community complaints or finding violent criminals, removing illegally possessed crime guns from our streets. We have a mounted patrol. So people ride horses for a living. We have motorcycles. People ride motorcycles.
Even in the winter, does the mounted patrol go out in the winter?
Yes. Yeah. There are limits, right, to the humans on top of these massive animals are probably the ones we have to worry about. The horses are probably fine, but yeah, they'll ride them in the winter.
Holy.
Yeah. Motorcycles. If there's ice on the ground, they're not going to ride the motorcycles. But there are occasions where you'll see some of our motorcycle cops ride as well.
Holy. Okay, so that into one of those more, I would say, like specialized roles?
Specialized detective roles, and then, at 5 years, you can take the sergeant's test. You can test to become a supervisor on our agency.
Okay, and so then let's say you pass the sergeant's test, you become a supervisor. So on that morning roll call, you're kind of like briefing everyone.
And now you're leading that. Now you're responsible for all those women and men that are under your charge. You're responsible for making sure they do their job correctly. You're responsible to make sure they get home at the end of the shift.
Yeah. And so then you go from sergeant, and then what's the
lieutenant?
Okay. Oh wow. And is that like, are you overseeing sergeants?
So now the whole patrol shift is yours. So you may have 55 people under your command. Middle shift shift commander on North District may have between 50 and 60 people that are under the command.
I can only imagine the stress for 8 hours, or what the shift is 5:30 to 1:30.
They're 8.5 hour. Patrol shifts are 8.5 hours. You work 6 days on and you're 3 days off.
I can only imagine, the stress. It's like you're the lieutenant and you have 60 human beings that are like under your supervision and all across the city, stepping into not the safest line of work, right? Yeah. So, wow, holy. What is like a day, if you're the lieutenant, what does your day look like? Are you monitoring all this as it's going on? And, okay, John's over here and Rachel's over here, et cetera, et cetera?
Yeah, there's a lot of tasks that supervisors are responsible for throughout the day. And so that lieutenant is making sure, planning for the shifts ahead. How many people do I have tomorrow? How many people are off? Do I have anybody that's sick? Do I have to worry about scheduling training? And those kind of things. And then there's administrative paperwork. Every time we use force, for example, we have to do a special report. It has to be investigated by a supervisor. And so that lieutenant is part of that investigation. Sergeants usually do it if a patrol officer is involved. And then that goes up the chain of command for all those layers of review to make sure that what happened was within policy, it was legally allowed. So there's a lot of administrative paperwork and tasks that go along.
Are there times that sergeants or lieutenants get called out into the field?
Yes. I mean, if every patrol officer is out of service and the next available person is a sergeant, the sergeant will be dispatched. The sergeants get called out to certain runs that involved child welfare checks. Sometimes it's a requirement to send a supervisor out to those, or someone's not very happy with the service that they were provided by their police officer.
Oh, I mean,
so
you see that.
The supervisor.
You see that all over Instagram, right? Where it's like, let me talk to your supervisor. I am the supervisor, or whatever.
Yeah.
It's
well,
like,
I want your supervisor. Yeah, right.
Yeah, and you just like keep calling up the line and line. Okay, so where did you feel like you got your first big break when it came to your career? Did you set out when you were 18, like, I want to be the chief of police?
No, not at 18. No way. I just wanted to be like those two guys that that came in and visited with me at the park and who I rode around with. I wanted to do that work. I even was able to patrol my own neighborhood. Once I got on occasionally on the near us side. I grew up in a neighborhood called West Indy, so it's just on the other side of the river near downtown, not too far away from downtown. In fact, we rode our bikes downtown to Union Station when that was a thing. When I was a kid. So,
well, what's the cross street that we're taking you in?
Harding and Morris Street.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, Belmont and Morris.
That's like kind of like would it be north of like the GM stamping plant in that area over there?
It's south of that.
Oh, south of there. Okay.
South and west a little bit.
And where'd you go to high school?
I went to George Washington High School at IPS. I'm a proud IPS grad.
School
46, Daniel Webster. School 47, Thomas Edison. And George Washington High School.
I feel like the IPS has gone through several iterations, and whether there's turmoil or whether they're figuring that piece out. It's cool to come from like you're patrolling, you go to George Washington High School, and then you're in that neighborhood and you're working there. And as you raise through the ranks, when did you decide that a leadership career was going to be the right one for you?
I really think that my big opportunity, I took the promotion test whenever I was eligible to do that. So at 5 years, I took the sergeant's test. And you have to be in grade. You have to be a sergeant for 2 years before you can take this lieutenant's test. And so I wasn't quite 2 years in when the first time the test came around. So I was a sergeant for 5 years, and I'm glad I was a sergeant for 5 years. I had so many experiences as a sergeant, both on the street. I was a detective sergeant. I was a narcotics sergeant. I got to over narcotics unit. I got to be in the FBI Safe Streets Task Force as a task force officer running a squad where we worked on drug trafficking organizations and gangs in our city. So I don't regret having 5 years. Or some people that the way they time their test and do so well, they're smarter than me, obviously. They can jump right into the next test. So I really think when I saw I wanted to be a major part of the leadership team when I was a lieutenant and I was asked to run the public information office, PIOs, the public spokespersons for the agency, and so I got to see how the chiefs worked, all the decision making that went in, how important it is to message our community and to tell our story and talk about the good work that we do. And that really was my journey on the trajectory to where I am at.
Yeah, and when you think about the communication piece, like coming on a podcast like this, like I don't know, when I set out on this journey, I had no idea that I would end up with the chief of police in the chair here.
You had much bigger guests than me. Let's be honest about that.
I don't know. This is one. It's super unique, and I don't think that a lot of people get the chance to sit down and have an hour conversation with the chief of police. But when you think about the communication aspect, I think there is a large gap between public perception and the reality. Yeah. And so you were working, the PIO?
Yeah, public information officer. Yeah.
And so what are the challenges that in communication that the IMPD is facing, getting the messaging out to the community?
Well, especially now it's even more difficult with the emergence of podcasts and so much emphasis on social media. It's hard for us to keep up with the speed of that. Sometimes narratives take over when they aren't necessarily true, and it's important that we're right in the information that we set out. Because if we put out wrong information, then it could cause some reactions we don't want. If we're wrong and we have to retract it, then it makes us look like we've been covering something up or that we're not telling the truth and being honest about what we're doing. And so we really try to be thoughtful and think through how we release information, especially in critical incidents when officers are involved in those incidents, officer-involved shootings, for example. So making sure that we have the right information is important. But we had an officer-involved shooting just a couple of days ago. There was a lot of information we didn't know, but we had to tell the community what was happening to this point. We did that, and then I got caught. Then when we didn't fill in the blanks, people in the community fill them in for us. Then we're fighting to try to retract them, those things. So that's the challenge now. Is that social media? It's great in a lot of areas. But in a lot of areas, it allows for just misinformation and allows people to say things that just aren't true. Frankly, those individuals have no accountability. I'm accountable for everything that I say.
Yeah, and in a world where speed is kind of like the currency of social media, right? Yeah. Where if I go out and say like, oh my gosh, the potholes are great, like whatever, and there's no like, I don't need to be right, wrong, and different. Like it's like, oh, no one, it's just a person saying something on social media. But when a government agency that has to be very meticulous and, fact. Like you deal in, like I deal in a lot of opinion, right? And hype and this, that, and the other thing. And for you guys, it's like when you put a statement out, it has to be 100% the cold cut facts that you guys know.
Yeah, and that puts us behind sometimes when that happens because people are going to fill in their blank. People have their feelings about police. People have their feelings about officer-involved incidents, and so they're gonna take that opportunity to fill in that gap. And so what we've done is really built a strong community network behind the scenes that we can get in front of these issues and be in front of the community within 48 hours of these events and tell them what's happening. Even though there was a narrative out there, the person that had that narrative called me. I'm open to those communications, so I was able to dispel those rumors and tell them that's not what happened, fill them in with what actually did happen, and tell them we would be updating the community. So why it puts us behind, what we've done here in Indianapolis over the last two chiefs, and now I'm the beneficiary of that, is building strong communication systems and networks throughout the community. Chief Height always used to call it chips in the bank of trust, and that when the time comes, you can cash some of those chips in for people to believe what you're saying is true.
I think a decade ago, maybe 15 years ago, the way in which you guys probably communicated was maybe a column or a piece in a newspaper or an actual press conference or things like that. Mm-hmm. What are the innovations that you're seeing when it comes to social media or just modern media in general that you're having to learn and do? And where are you seeing the most effective way to communicate with the citizens of Indianapolis?
Well, let's be honest with it. I'm not having to learn much of anything. I've got a great team. My chief communications officer came from the news world. She really changed our dynamic to help us understand the news cycle, help us understand what the traditional media is going to be asking for from, when I say traditional media, the newspapers, the television stations. And now, the dynamic we have now is smaller internet-based news organizations that have a different way of operating. So We're consistently learning. We had to hire a social media person, a 23-year-old, fresh out of college person who is helping us understand TikTok and how to leverage using short videos and information to get the audience we need to get to. Where it's easier to get to people my age, right? The 50-year-old plus. They're watching Fox 59. They're actually reading the physical Indianapolis Star.
I don't know where I'd even find an Indianapolis Star.
You can find plenty of them in Joe Hogsett's office, right? That man reads the newspaper every single day. And
Which is a little bit of the underlying of why I think Get Indiana and this is important, right?
Yes.
It's like every day, I actually remember growing up, it was like if you wanted to be in business, so you needed to read the Wall Street Journal
right.
every single day. Or if you want to be, and whatever the thing is, it's like go read the newspaper. And you do learn a ton.
Yeah.
But nowadays, it's like everyone, let's go 40 and under, is consuming this content on social media. And there's a gap for sure. Because there's a million organizations, right? Whether it's the fire department, the police department, the mayor, this, that, and the other thing that like you have to follow all these accounts and hope that it hits your algorithm.
That's right.
And so trying to be, that's why I try to be like one source where people are going to learn not everything. And it's not necessarily all of the news, but it is a place that's going to show up in their feed and they're going to get to learn and meet these people and learn about the stories that are happening across Indiana.
Well, you know, a lot of people, I mean, even me, I scroll through in the morning time through Twitter to see, is there any headline that grabs my, then I can go back and learn more on it. But and I don't know which online news organization it is, so I'm not going to say the name, but what I notice is that they write their stories in these small, like almost bullet point type thing that draws you to their website to read the news, and you get a lot of information out of it, but it's not written in a traditional way you would read a story in the Indianapolis Star or in the Indianapolis Business Journal, right? It's different. And so there has to be a multitude of ways to get your news and get your information. This podcast is great. You're reaching a lot of people, and frankly, a lot of people that we want to reach as a law enforcement agency, not only to tell our story and to make sure they're informed about what's happening in their city and with their police department, but also the demographics that are listening to you are the people we want to come serve their city.
Absolutely. When you think your career progression, now you're in a leadership role, right? You are the chief. What lessons from your early patrol days still influence your approach to leadership within the Indianapolis Metropolitan Police Department?
First of all, it is listening. Right, you have to do a lot of listening as a patrol officer, whether you want to or not, to figure out what happened. People call you in their worst moments, and so they're telling you their story, and it's important that you listen with some empathy, compassion, and understanding. Did I have that as a 23-year-old patrol officer? I did not. So I learned that over the time, and that's important now because especially in this seat, there's so many constituencies. So many people want my time. They want action. They want their most important to them dealt with the police, and they want it dealt with now. That part, if I could go back and prepare myself a little bit better, would be to learn more patience and more ability to listen. But over the course of sitting and watching some really good chiefs manage some pretty significant situations and how to deal with all these constituencies, I think I found my sweet spot, and that is if everyone's mad at you, you must be doing something right.
Everyone, yeah, right. Everyone just a constant cycle, a year of just everyone's got something that's
everybody's issue is the most important, and to them it is the most important thing. When you're a victim of a crime or you see something occurring in your piece of the world, it is the most important thing to you, and I appreciate that. Now multiply that by 350 square miles and almost 1 million people in six districts, and every single one of our districts is different. I was a commander of North District. It's my favorite district, by the way. Don't tell any of the rest of them.
We won't tell.
Even though I grew up as a patrol officer on the south side, I was a commander of North District, and I really miss it. It was my favorite job.
What did you love about it?
The people. There's not another district that I know of that has such diversity in the way people look, absolute poverty, absolute wealth. But what I found consistently in every single neighborhood with people that cared about their neighborhood, whether it was Broad Ripple or Butler, Tarkington, Crown Hill, Devington, wherever they were, was full of people who wanted the best for their situation, their kids, their families. We had the most commercial business anywhere between Castleton and the Fashion Mall, and at the time we had all the things along Michigan Avenue too. So 96th and Michigan East was on North District. You got Geist, this variety of people and things. And,
it's like no 2 days would be the same right?
No. You got people whose biggest issue was that my lawn furniture got stolen, and then you had some areas that were riddled with violent crime, and they needed different types of attention. So I really learned how to try to provide each individual neighborhoods using our cops to help provide that level of service that they need.
Compartmentalizing, right? Where it's like, okay, we're showing up in Meridian Kessler to talk through, lawn furniture was stolen. And then you have to be like, okay, give them your undivided attention. And your next call could be, maybe it's down on 38th Street or something where a violent crime or something is going on.
Someone lost their life by means of gun violence. And so competing interests, but finding a way to manage all those, it was tough. But when you have great cops that understand the mission, they do that work for you.
And that is, I keep lingering on everyone's issue is the biggest issue, whether it's your lawn furniture or a violent crime. It's crazy to think of them they're not on the same plane, but to the person that's on the other end of the phone or the person that you're standing and talking to, you don't want to treat their issue like, oh, this doesn't matter to them. You have to build trust within those relationships. And I think you guys are working to do a great job of building trust in your communities. Can you talk about some of the programs or initiatives that you guys have spun up to continue to build trust within the city of Indianapolis?
Police community partnerships have been a hallmark for this police department since the 90s, since Stephen Goldsmith was the mayor. It's on the side of our police cars. It was on the side of our police cars. And so it's an always front of mind endeavor, and it's one that we consistently have to work at. We're impacted by what happens in other cities when it relates to the police department. When George Floyd was killed in Minneapolis, it didn't happen in Indianapolis. We're impacted by what happens there, and with the way social media is and media is today in the news cycle, we have to be mindful of those things. So we're constantly trying to build that trust and legitimacy and building bridges to help fill that gap, because without the community, we can't keep them safe. We can't solve their crimes, so we have to have those partnerships. We have a great police athletic league program in our community engagement and outreach bureau. In that bureau, we have very few cops, but we have lots of volunteers. They coach basketball, coach baseball, they coach football, cheerleading, dance. And so it's a way to keep kids busy, keep them exercising, but also engage with our officers. That same bureau has done it with cops in schools. They go have lunch at one of our most challenged elementary schools and sit down with second, third, fourth, and fifth graders and have lunch with them and hear their stories and try to build those relationships. Some of the things some of these kids say to an officer when you're sitting down with them, a fourth grader, about what they experience at home, is pretty heartbreaking, or how they feel about a police officer and how they're scared and why they're scared. And so those are opportunities to build those things in the future. We're doing mentoring at the Shepherd Community Center and our tutoring there. And we have a program called IMPD Cares where we're going into schools and mentoring our young women and young men. Those are just a few things that we do at a centralized base.
Like a fourth grader, right? There are, fourth graders throughout the city of Indianapolis whose only ever experience with police officers and law enforcement are a call being answered. And they came in and maybe separated their family or just like those.
Or a loved one was killed.
Yeah. You're a fourth grader. No wonder you may not have the best perception of police officers, because that's the only interaction you've ever had. Yeah. And so then having these programs where you go down and realize, again, the big thing, I think my big message is that the people behind the badge are still people, and getting to know them. And you guys wouldn't do this if you didn't care about the community. I truly believe that. I think those community outreach programs and getting out there are important. And you talked about George Floyd and then the unrest across the country that brought. When you think back to 2020 in the city of Indianapolis, you weren't the chief at that point, but you were still in leadership. How was IMPD thinking and handling that situation?
It was a rough time, and I would tell you there's not been another 4.5 year span in policing in the history of the entire profession. The only thing close to it was probably the late 60s, early 70s, and it's the same thing we saw, racial reformation, the civil rights movements, and defunding of the police and de-incarceration. All those things occurred in that same period of time. The thing that added here that made this worse in the eras of policing was, one, we had a global pandemic, and you have social media, which fuels misinformation, it fuels fires and
a lot of people with a lot of free time, a lot of outlets like a social media outlet and a way to go and get outside and stand up for something that they believe in, right? And to ignite change. But on the opposite side of that, and I mean not even the opposite side, but just from the like, this is happening in our city and there's a lot of unrest. What were the conversations that you all were having about how to understand and empathize with those sides of the party, but also like continue to keep Indianapolis safe?
Yeah, there were days, and I was the assistant chief, that, don't forget about COVID in there, that we were changing how we did business 4 or 5 times a day based on what guidance was coming down from CDC or the state or whatever, how to keep our officers healthy and safe, how to keep our professional staff safe, and how to keep the community safe. And then you add in, the consistent, constant protests, and then we had 3 days of pretty bad civil unrest that were happening all across the country. While I think our cops did an admirable job, they did a really. It was tough. I listened to the radios. I heard what was happening, right? And there were the things that we wish we could have done differently, absolutely. And everybody was trying to feel their way out through that. But it was tough. And anybody that was in a leadership position anywhere in a major city in a police department really had trial by fire during those times, because it was not only were you dealing with the things on the streets, but you're also dealing with policy reforms and training reforms and legislation that was changing how we do business. Every now and then you have to have those resets. I just wish it wasn't as dramatic as it was. Police departments, including our own, bear some responsibility for people's frustration with policing and the lack of change, or at least the perception of lack of change. But they don't bear all the burden.
What are some of the changes or innovations or different policies that have been put in place over the last 4.5, 5 years now?
We've seen significant reductions in our how we do vehicle pursuits and why we do vehicle pursuits. It's a high risk, high liability thing, so we've seen significant changes in that and how we do them and why we do them. We talk more about de-escalation, how we talk to people. We talk about using less lethal tools, time, distance barriers when it comes to communication, when it comes to dealing with individuals, especially that are in mental health crisis. We talk a lot about mental health crisis more than ever before. We have more civilian oversight probably than we've ever had. We have a civilian majority use of force review board that reviews all of our major uses of force involving officers in our community. We have a civilian majority general orders board. We operate under policies and procedures. We call them general orders or standard operating procedures. That civilian board now writes a lot of our policies for us. So those are a few big things that came out of it, including rewriting our use of force policy.
That's a lot of good change. And when you talk about de-escalation, I think that's the route that a lot of people, and that can't happen in every case, right? Like not every time.
It doesn't always work.
Yeah.
You can try, but if you and I are arguing, we both have to agree to stop.
Yeah.
Right. So it takes two parties. But I can't continue as an officer, shouldn't instigate you to force me to do something I needed to do. We need to be calm. But at some point, we expect our officers to take action, because inaction could lead to something bad happen as well.
Yeah, that's just like such a balancing act.
Yeah.
I'm glad it's a problem that I'm not in charge of solving. That would be really, really hard. I would encourage
you or anybody to go out and do a ride-along one shift, just to see the magnitude and the multitude of things that our officers are asked to deal with every single day. I think people think that it's just cops and robbers, good guys versus bad guys, but we're sending 23-year-old, 22-year-olds into houses trying to mitigate arguments between parents and their children. A 23-year-old who doesn't have any kids, we're asking them to go in and solve the problem between a mother, a 30-something-year-old mother, and a 10-year-old kid, right? All the way to being shot at, and just doing their job. So we ask a lot of our officers, and we sometimes think we know what they go through every day and what they deal with, and we don't. And so I would encourage you or anyone else to go out and just see it. And then you can come back and talk about what you saw.
And even if you don't set the time to go do an actual ride-along, but like looking through some of the body cam footage that's being put out, because I think that's definitely become more prevalent over the last 4 or 5 years. Is that like your choice? Is that a mandated thing? Where did that become so prevalent?
Depends on where you're at. Like, I think that Indianapolis we, from the beginning, said when we have body-worn cameras, we're going to do our part to be as transparent as possible and add context. Sometimes releasing a raw video of an incident doesn't provide the context. It doesn't tell you what led the officer up there. So we've decided to create these critical incident videos. If you've never seen them, they're on our website, right? To tell more of the story and still leave it up to the person to decide whether or not they believe the officer's actions were righteous or not.
Go watch a few of those and see all because then you guys break them down, you slow-mo, you maybe zoom in on some stuff to make sure you have the facts that are there and put yourself in those shoes. Yeah. And it's like reaction time, understanding, inaction, de-escalation. You got 10,000 things running through your mind, and
split second. Everybody wants you to be right every time. Yeah. In a split second, when you have to decide between losing your life or taking someone else's, in some instances, and it's tough if you've never been in there.
And on the backside of that, when an incident like that happens, what does the next 1 week, 1 month, 6 months look like on the backside of that?
So within 48 hours, we get together with a community group and it's led by the community. They host it on a virtual basis, and we get on and we talk about the incident. We talk about what we know, what the facts are, let them ask questions, dispel any rumors, talk about next steps. We talk about the process repeatedly so that people understand the process, because officers are citizens and they have rights under the Constitution. And there's a process through the prosecutor's office and internal reviews to determine whether the actions were justified, legal. And so we want to talk about that process over and over again so people understand it. And then the investigation is ongoing. We have 2 parallel tracks, a criminal investigation and an administrative investigation. And those are going on simultaneously. One is looking about whether or not the officer's actions were legal, and the other, were they within policy and in their training. And that's, at the end of the day, I determine whether or not I believe their actions were within policy or training, and then I deal discipline, or I agree with the findings that it's in policy.
Is that a hard spot to sit in?
It's the worst job.
Like the buck stops with you.
Yeah, it's the worst part of the job. And it's every disciplinary, whether it's an officer-involved shooting or someone who comes in late to roll call. I deal with all of that. Eventually, it comes across my desk.
In terms of frequency, what are the most common things that are coming?
Officers are getting in trouble for the way they talk to people. They become frustrated. They say things. They yell or scream. It's the talking usually that gets them in trouble.
Well, and it's like you add another layer to it, right? So decision making, de-escalation, customer service, right? Where it's like, and you've been to. I don't want to compare it to a restaurant, right? But it's like you've been to a restaurant where you've had poor customer service, and you've been to a restaurant where they were polite and courteous, and like that's a piece of perception and the impact, though. Yeah. Like if you go to, and I'm going to continue on this comparison, right? But if you go to one McDonald's, there's kind of like the stereotype, but like you still go back because maybe you'll get a better person that's more polite. But one person's poor interaction then affects the perception of an entire population of this career.
We have segments of our community that may have never had a negative encounter with a police officer, but members of their family did. And it goes back generations. And that mistrust and issues is passed from generation to generation. So you're right. One bad experience with a law enforcement officer can have negative impacts for every law enforcement officer now and in the future. So we don't want that. We want our officers to treat everybody. Remember what I said earlier. Most of the time when you call a police officer, you're having a really bad day. And the last thing you want to see is some smart aleck, uncaring, unempathetic person talking to you when you called them for help. But cops are human beings too. They have bad days too. But that's no excuse. In every circumstance, the expectation is that people are treated with respect and dignity, no matter what the circumstances. Whether it's someone we have to arrest or someone that we had to use force on, that person deserves to be treated with dignity, regardless of what had to happen up to a certain point.
JC Hart Company is your answer to navigating the apartment rental journey. With almost 50 years of creating enjoyable living experiences in Indiana, you'll be sure to find your new home sweet home. You're going to find 30 communities in the best areas Indiana has to offer. Hamilton County, downtown Indy, Bloomington, just to name a few, along with 5 brand new luxury communities. Visit homeisjchart.com/Nate to find their list of locations and reach out to one of their many dedicated leasing agents for a personalized tour. Tell them Nate sent you and they're they're going to take good care of you. Looking for a career in property management? You'll also find a list of open positions on their website, along with all the reasons why JC Hart is named one of Indiana's best places to work. Want a sneak peek into life as a JC Hart resident or associate? Be sure to check them out on Instagram at homeisjchart or visit homeisjchart.com/Nate. One more time, home is JC Hart. A large portion of this first half of the podcast has been about people within our community. No shock to anyone, we also play host to a lot of visitors where people come in and this is their conference city or the Super Bowl city or the Taylor Swift Eras Tour city, you know, and it's not home to them. Yeah. And I do think there is a difference between people who call this place home and people who are visiting here. And you think about all the events that we host. From the police department perspective, how do you guys think about those events and make sure that they run smoothly and you have traffic and you have out-of-towners and downtown's population increased by 60,000 on Sunday afternoons, right? How are you guys thinking about that?
First of all, no city is a better host than Indianapolis for whatever it is you want to bring here. We've proven it over and over again. Who hosts a Super Bowl in February in Indianapolis, Indiana, and gets 55-degree days? Nobody but Indianapolis. That's why we're the best. I mean, we even bring in good weather.
Amen.
For these events.
That's right? That Hoosier hospitality.
That's Hoosier hospitality right there. But we have a great team of planners in our police department and public safety partners because it takes all of us working together to pull off getting 350,000 people in and out of the Indianapolis Motor Speedway.
Like how much staff, how many police officers does it take to pull off the Indy 500?
Hundreds. And that's a combination of IMPD and Indiana State Police and Speedway and our federal partners who bring in a tremendous amount of resources because it's a national security event. And so when it becomes a national security event, we get a lot of resources from the federal government. You know, specific to downtown, our great partnerships with Indiana Sports Corp and Downtown Indy Inc. and the Capital Improvement Board, they're working together every single day on permitting and putting on these events. Last year was a huge year for our city. It was the most canceled days off. We have to cancel our cops' days off in a lot of these events. And so they handled it well. It was a lot for us. It continues to be a lot for us because we have the other event. We have Colts games, we have Indians games, we have Pacer games. Soon, I'm hopeful that we'll have some soccer games to
matches,
deal with.
Some soccer matches.
Soccer matches. That's right.
Yeah,
matches.
we're a culture podcast here.
You know, I don't even think I even saw a soccer ball until I was in my 20s. Probably when as a kid, it wasn't as football, basketball, baseball. That was it. So you know, I hope.
And not to mention the conventions.
The conventions. Right? The firefighters bring in 40,000 people every year. FFA 75,000 teenagers here every single year.
What are the
Gen Con? Have you been down there to see the Princess Leia's and the?
I can only imagine the calls that are coming in with 75,000 high schoolers down on the circle in their corduroy jackets.
Yeah, it's a great conference, well behaved. Our biggest thing is getting them across streets. I've been driving from A to B, and there's a big herd coming across the street. I'll stop and make sure they get across because it's massive amounts of blue jackets.
And their lime scooter incidents up and to the right there. Was that like a big point of maybe not contention, but like a new piece that, again, something that didn't exist 7 years ago, 8 years ago, and now everyone's scootering the wrong way down the sidewalk.
It was a hot topic the first couple of years, but I think we found our sweet spot. You know, the companies have evolved a little bit to carve out geo zones. You ever been riding one and out of the city, and all of a sudden it just stopped working?
Yeah,
it's just like what's happening? Columbus, Ohio, that happened to me. I tried to take it into a huge park in downtown, and I got about 5 feet into the park, and it just died out.
And I'm like ripping it like a normal scooter, trying to get my speed back up. Oh man!
Yeah, but since it's settled down a little bit, I think.
And I feel like now, for the majority, what I see is like everyone found like the bike lane and those spots to not be on the sidewalk and running into people and this, that, and the other thing there. Because that for a minute, it was like every third person I talked to was like, oh, I crashed a line last night.
And just before you change topics, I had such a great time during the Taylor Swift concerts. It was good, changing those bracelets out, and everybody was positive. There was an energy like you'd never seen before. Tens of thousands of people on the street, even though we weren't going to the concert. You know,
I was down there for the final night, out and about. You know, like man on the street kind of stuff. Holy smokes, people were. I've never seen more glitter. Yeah. And people were excited. Yeah. Like, and people drove from Ohio. They drove from all over and didn't have tickets. They just were trying to either find some or just listen from outside, and you couldn't hear anything, which is brutal.
definitely on the last 2 nights of the concert, they figured they were blaring it from those pedicabs. They were
yeah,
blaring
yeah.
somebody had figured out a way to. Somebody was streaming it live from inside, so they were streaming the music live right there at Capitol and South Street.
That's pretty fun. And so yeah, when you think through the event calendar, you have event planners that are on there. What are the biggest challenges or just headaches that you're seeing from hosting so many events?
Exhaustion for the officers. You know, our motorcycle cops do a lot of the heavy lifting on those particular instances, and our special operations people like bomb sniffing dogs, and our SWAT operators who provide overwatch. I mean, places you don't see them, they're probably watching the crowd. They're looking for, it's basically counter sniper type thing, or to try to stop something happening. What we saw in New Orleans is impacting everybody that hosts major city, and we have to rethink, you know, vehicle incursions. It's always been a thing for us, and so maybe people don't notice it when they see snow plows or metro buses or dump trucks parked at certain intersections, and maybe you don't think about that, but that's to stop those type of things from occurring. Happen a lot more in Europe than they do in the United States, but that keeps me up at night is worrying about safety. We have such a condensed downtown.
It's funny that we have a sprawling city, but a very condensed mile square down
there. You go
to
Boston, you don't even know where. I mean, what is considered downtown? I was in Boston in October last year, and I just kept walking and walking. It all looked the same. Like is this all downtown? But you know when you're downtown Indianapolis, right? And so that makes it a little more difficult. We want it to be a walkable town. We sell it as a walkable town. And so those pose challenges for us is to making sure, especially when we're 300 officers down, being able to provide enough staffing for these events and without wearing your cops out is a challenge.
When you say 300 officers down, what do you mean by that?
So we have a budgeted strength of 1,743 police officers, and right now we have about 1,450.
And that's a perfect segue into how is IMPD thinking about recruiting this next generation? And is that deficit coming from shorter careers? Maybe people come in and they're like, yeah, I don't want to do this for 25 years. I don't want to serve for 27 years. Or is it from a deficit of new recruits coming in?
It's both. So we talked earlier about what happened in 2020 and all the police reformation and all the rhetoric that was around that. I think that similar to lots of things, we tend to swing this pendulum way too far one direction. We swung it too far in 2020, and it's had an impact on people that want to do this job. We can do and want good constitutional fair policing and accountable policing and care about our cops and see their value and why they're important. Part of the pendulum swung too far in one direction, and I think it's impacted major city police departments across the country. We're not immune to that, but we're seeing fewer people apply. When you have fewer people apply, what comes out of the bottom of the funnel is fewer people. And so we had just graduated a class of 6 recruits. We used to have classes of 70, 75 people. We're averaging probably about 20 per class. We added a class a year to try to get people in and out more often. And we saw a lot of people say, I've had enough of this. I've been through a lot in my career, but what's happened in 2020 and the pandemic and everything that we've seen occur, I'm out. I'm going to go collect my pension. We do a better job of preparing people for retirement than they did in maybe previous generations where people were only focused on their pension. We have 401k type benefits, and people are saving their money and being more financially secure so they don't have to work. We have somebody on our police department that's working over 50 years. And we have another person that's approaching 50 years on this agency.
What's their day-to-day like? So I assume they started at 18 if they're 50.
21. I mean, they've just been on longer than I've been alive.
Yeah. Who's this? I don't know if you're allowed to say who the person is.
I don't think Skip Copeland is on the south side. He's a detective sergeant. So I've never seen a more energetic and happy person to be at work every single day with that much time on. Every single time I go to visit Skip, he's a great, great man, great public service. He is always positive. He's always smiling. He's asking me how I'm doing. And he comes in and he does his job every single day.
50 years.
50 years, yeah. 50 years.
That is
50 plus years.
And
right?
you talk about one of the original things you said is it's a calling.
Yeah.
Like 50 years and still bringing the energy, like that is Skip's calling.
Yeah, that's it. He loves this job. We love him. He's a great cop.
That's amazing. On the south side?
On the south side.
Heck yeah. So when you're thinking of how to attract the next generation,
Yeah.
how to continue to fill that deficit of 300 police officers. What are you guys doing to fix that issue?
It's a tough one in this job, especially when we're a 24/7 operation. We work shifts. There's a lot of people that don't want to work after 4 or 5 o'clock every day. They certainly don't want to work on Saturdays and Sundays, and so that poses a challenge. This idea of remote work is also, caused us some significant challenges. There's a lot of jobs where you can work remote and make as much money, if not more, than sometimes in a lot less risk than a police officer. So I think this younger generation expects different things, right? They expect to be well taken care of. Mental health and physical wellness is important to us now. It's important to our younger generations. We have more resources available than ever before to deal with mental health issues and challenges and family issues that exist, but we have to do better. This recent labor contract focuses more on retention than recruiting. We've done a lot to raise pay over the last several years, starting pay for new officers to try to bring them in the door. It didn't exactly work. We tried hiring bonuses. It didn't exactly work. We tried hiring officers from other agencies. It didn't work. So there's a lot of challenges. So this last labor contract addresses some family issues that people are interested in. So we have, I don't know that there's another agency in the state of Indiana that offers 12 weeks of parental leave. Male, female, partner, spouse, adoption, those type of issues. I think that's important to this younger generation and retaining them, that I don't want to have to choose between my career and a family, where that may have been the case in the past. We're trying to build a wellness center, public safety wellness center that focuses on physical health, mental health, social health, spiritual health, and financial health. All those 5 pillars that all under one roof. So we'll have our chaplains, we'll have a workout facility, we'll have a mental health clinicians and workers. We'll encourage people to come play basketball with each other, have 3-on-3 competitions, have a pickleball court in there, run a movie night in there. Our physical fitness contractor that works on our musculoskeletal injuries will be in the building. And so we're working through financial and philanthropic ways to raise money for that to show our cops that we care about them, and we're caring about not just their physical health, but all those things that make people happy and healthy. Because a happy and healthy cop serves better, will stay here longer, and will be able to reach what we want them to reach, is to be able to enjoy the pension that they've earned.
If there were, let's say, 18, 19-year-old kids that are trying to figure out their career path, whether they're young men, young women, and what they're seeing in the media, right? They kind of I think, write off taking a career down law enforcement just because what gets amplified is so much negative. Yeah. What would you say if you could go out and have a million conversations with this younger generation? What would you say to them, and what would the sales pitch be to become an IMPD officer?
Let me tell you about my journey, the opportunities that I've had throughout my career to do things that I never thought I'd be able to do. I came from 2 hardworking family, both mom and dad at work. We didn't have a lot, but I never felt like I didn't have a lot. My first year as a police officer in 1999, I made more than my parents. Yeah, $28,000 is what I made in 1999.
Did you kind of feel like you made it then?
Well, first of all, being a lifeguard, making $8 an hour as a pool manager and getting that check every 2 weeks was like, wow, we're going to White Castle, sack of 10 for everybody, right? And $28,000 in my first year. And then, I had this conversation with my mom before she passed last year. It was like, Mom, do you know how much money I make a year at the time? And it's like, I never crossed my mind. So I say that because you don't do this job to get rich, and you're not going to be rich doing this job. But I've had opportunities to travel around this country. My vacation was at Kings Island when I was a kid. It allowed me to meet my wife, and we have 3 great kids. So everything I have in my life is because of this job. I get to give back to a city who gave me everything, who helped raise me in a neighborhood where we looked at this village and we raised our kids together. And I'm sorry,
no,
a little emotional because it's this place is special to me, and I've had so many opportunities to serve, and things I've gotten to do. And you have a pension at the end. Who talked pension? I didn't know what a pension was either. I knew we had it when I came on.
I mean, there's very few organizations that still offer that.
Yeah.
And I don't know if you want to get, you get a portion of your earnings for the rest of your life.
Like if you work here 32 years, the state of Indiana is going to give you 77% of a patrol officer's pay for the rest of your life. Or not 25-year officers pay for the rest of your life. Doesn't exist anywhere else. All you have to do, and you can get that pension as early as 20 years. So I'd talk about that a little bit, but I'd talk about all the opportunities. What we hear from, this generation is that they don't like staying in one place for longer than, 3 or 4 or 5 years. What other place can you go to and ride a bike today, a motorcycle tomorrow, a horse the next day? You can be a digital forensics investigator and dig into my cell phone and see, what I've been up to. You can be a polygraph examiner. You can be a background investigator. You can investigate homicide. You can help protect our children by investigating child abuse cases or internet crimes against children. There's so many options within the agency that you think that if you think it's just, 911 calls and patrol car, it's not. It's so much more than that. And there's so many opportunities, and there's so many opportunities in a large agency than you're going to find in some of the smaller ones. And, I'm biased. I think this is the best police department. We have the best cops.
I'm sold. I love it. I just think being able to share that story, a lot of people are looking for change of pace and like changing the perception that you're just going to ride in one car doing the same job for 30 years versus, you've had what seems like 10 careers in 27 years,
I've gotten to do so many things that, if I was just making widgets, that's what I'd do every single day. I'd come in and make the same widget every single day for 20 years. I've been a detective. I've been a motorcycle cop.
You started on a bicycle?
I rode it. I started in the street. I probably should have been on a bicycle, as many crashes as I had. But as a patrol officer, but 2 weeks of motorcycle school was the hardest school I've ever been to in my life. 2 straight weeks of learning how to ride a motorcycle. You ever lifted a 500? I think they're 500 plus pounds when you tilt it on its side and try to lift that thing up by yourself. It's difficult work.
Oh, you got it? Yeah.
So
wow.
many narcotics investigations and, working with the FBI and the Secret Service, dignitary protection details, presidential details, vice presidential details, all the candidates that came through here when Obama won his first term. We had Hillary Clinton and Bill Clinton, and I've had the opportunity to meet so many people and go to Taylor Swift and participate in the Super Bowl, all because this city believed in me to be a police officer.
Man, as we got to get to the end of the show, I'd love to talk about one or two of the topics that are top of mind for you as we're early on in 2025 here. What are the things that are taking up a lot of the mental capacity for you in 2025?
Yeah, so we have really 5 broad priorities in 2025, and there's lots of little bitty things in between it. One is reducing violent crime. Along with some of the other things we saw in 2020, 21, and 22, we saw a significant amount of increase in gun violence and violent crime. Over the last 3.5 years and the mayor's leadership, we've seen criminal homicides drop by 30%. We're seeing a significant decline this year, but anytime someone dies as violent crime, we've not been successful. And so we have to continue to push down violent crime. We mentioned it, we talked about it here, retention and recruiting. If we're going to do all the things we want to do, keep hosting events, keep allowing people to have these career advancements, we have to hire and we have to retain that talent. Officer wellness. We've got to take care of the people that take care of us. It's important to us to do those things because they'll take better care of the community when we take care of them. Those are the really big ones in front of mine. We have to continue to modernize our police department, use technology to our advantage with decreasing staffing. Those are all really important to the success of our agency.
I think those are all great initiatives, and it's the initiatives that you see online, right? That people are upset about. I think change and solutions never come as quick as anyone wants them. No. Like if there was a magic wand that everyone could wave and solve everything, like of course we'd do that. But it's good to know that those are priorities that are, you're taking steps towards solving.
People talk about being a battleship in a lake and trying to turn that around. It takes a long time.
We're down to the end of the show here where I kind of run through, I got a couple fun segments here.
All right.
So the first one would be the Younger Years segment. This is brought to you by our friends at Orr Fellowship. They're a great organization here in Indiana, helping develop young business leaders across the state. So, Chief, what advice would you give to your 22-year-old self?
Learn some patience and humility. It'll serve you well in life. You don't know it all at 22 years old. Slow down.
At 22, how much you think you know, and then as you get older, you actually know more but think you know less.
I have a 23-year-old son. He tells me how much he knows every day.
Amen. Well, what's your 23-year-old son doing?
He does IT work.
Oh, nice.
So he's making more money than I could ever imagine at 22 years old.
Hey, isn't that like how it goes, right? You go out there
Yeah.
and you make more money than your parents, and then
Yeah.
you expect your kids to go out there and make more money than mom and
But
dad.
you know what? I'll give him that. He's much more responsible with his money than I was.
Hey, there we go. Now we have some lightning round questions. Some of them are just, interesting questions that I thought of when we have the chief of police here. First one would be, what's the biggest misconception around police officers?
That we all eat donuts. That we're machines. I think that we all work under the same brain, that some computer controls us, right? We're each individuals, human beings with our own stories, our own experiences, our own background, those type of things, that we are human beings and we care. I think that's the biggest misconception is everybody sees us as a uniform, as a thing, and not as a person.
That's a really good answer. What's the most frequent 911 call?
Disturbance. Someone's arguing with someone else. I'm arguing with my neighbor. I'm arguing with my kid, my spouse, whatever. That's probably the most prevalent from my days is just disturbances.
That makes sense. What has been the most memorable day of your police career?
My experience where I get to spend 10 weeks training at the FBI National Academy, that was probably the most impactful experience.
What did that training look like?
We classroom training every single day, physical training. I equate it to this as college with a little more money. We stayed in a dorm. We shared a suite with three other dudes. Shared one bathroom, and then we went to class. We worked out every day, and I made networks of cops throughout the world: France, Italy, Kuwait. So I have these connections all over the world. So that was the most impactful event in my life. Narrowed down to one specific thing. That's difficult. I've had so many.
That would be a fun one. And I feel like, I don't know how long police academy is. 6 months.
Yes.
Right. So, but then did you go do what you said, 10 weeks of specialized training?
Yeah, 20 weeks of field training.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, at the FBI Academy.
Oh, at the FBI, 10 weeks. Yeah. I was a lieutenant, I think, when I got to do that.
So then you got to kind of take a step back and you're like living in a dorm for 10 weeks.
It's like college again, except I didn't have to worry about where I was getting money for the weekend.
Okay, there we go. So every day, 1,400 police officers in Indianapolis go out and risk their life.
Yeah.
And I know that there's the unfortunate circumstances that happen. But there's like a scholarship foundation and a lot of things like that when unfortunate circumstances. Are there any of those other community groups that are supporting police officers that people should know about?
Yeah, we have an organization called the 100 Club, 100 influential business people around the country, or around the city, that if something bad happens to one of our police officers, they try to take care of that person's family financially. The COPS organization is a nationwide organization that deals with surviving family members. Unfortunately, have to live with losing their loved one, which is the absolute worst thing to happen. I've lost a dear friend, Jake Laird, in 2004, and of course, as the assistant chief, we lost Breanne Leith. That's our latest officer killed in line of duty. That's the absolute worst days. If you ask me that question, that was an absolute worst day. But the FOP does a great job of taking care of families and survivors after critical incidents, and we have two great foundations: the Central Indiana Police Foundation and the Indy Public Safety Foundation. Both of those are great organizations that every day wake up and find ways that they can serve our public safety community.
How often does an officer fall in the line of duty?
The last one for us was in 2020.
You've been as a chief for a year now, so we haven't had that, which is
No.
That's great. But I can't imagine just and as tight knit as this community is, like having to experience and deal with that, and then remember it's like that happen, and then someone's got to go out on the street the next hour, the next day.
Their friends and family, their classmates, people they spent 6 months with, grinding in the police academy, which in the case of Breanne Leith, it had the most impact on this agency because she was so young. They were all so fresh out there on the street, and the impact and trauma that it had on her classmates has been, it's impacted us. It still impacts us today.
Yeah,
she was a beautiful soul. I mean, that's one of those things when we talk about. You see, some people see her as a uniform. They don't know that she fed the homeless every day, or that she bought pots and pans, that she had a little boy that she was raising by herself. Those are things that you don't know about that individual because you only see him as a uniform and not the person that lays behind it. But she was the absolute best of us. And if you open the dictionary and looked at the police officer and there was a picture, that's who you'd want, top to bottom.
Man, that's real.
Yeah.
This is one of the. I mean, sometimes we get to sit on the show and it's laugh and it's jokes and it's that, but then I greatly appreciate the real conversations that we get to have, and shedding light on these stories and these just different individuals and people. I think that something that's gonna stick with me is that people see cops as things, and not necessarily as people. I think that's super important, and having a place to talk about that and amplify those stories. And I would encourage people to go look up and learn more about Brianne and these organizations that support officers, whether it's here in Central Indiana, Indiana beyond, or just across the country. I think that there's a lot of people doing really impactful work there. One thing that's really popular right now is the whole true crime aspect shows. So do you have any guilty pleasure true crime shows?
Honestly, stay away from those shows, just because I get so much of it during the day that I don't have a lot of interest in it. But man, oh man, a lot of people do. My daughter's a travel volleyball player, and the parents, they're always intrigued about policing. And so they want to talk to me about Delphi. And I'm like, I can't provide you an honest assessment of Delphi one way or the other because I just didn't pay that close attention to it. But it's so amazing how many people were all in on that all the time. And it's not just that case. It's, last February we partnered with somebody that does a podcast, and we ended up solving a cold case.
No way.
Because of some of the work that they did. Yeah.
Wait, what podcast?
I don't remember. I'll try to get it to you. It was she's local, I think.
Is it Crime Junkies?
Yes, it's Crime Junkies.
They're right across. Wait, you partnered with Ashley Flowers?
She partnered. Yeah, they partnered and worked with an old case, and it wasn't a homicide, but it was maybe it was. I can't remember. But last February we did an announcement about it, but it was an old case that used genealogy and all that to finally figure it out.
That's pretty
huge.
Cool.
It's huge.
Well, and right now the Hulu documentary in Fox Hollow is all the rage now about the Westfield alleged serial killer or whatever. And people are asking I'm like, I don't know any. That's not. I'm not a true crime junkie. I love Crime Junkies because they're here in Indiana, but I'm not like a true crime fan.
I have a neighbor who's a really close friend. His mom is all in these shows. Probably make a really good detective. But she's in her 70s.
I love that because you just start putting pieces together. I listened to the Serial podcast when it first came out, and it was this whole big. It was the first podcast I felt that really crushed it. And after listening to 2 episodes, I was like, nope, I'm good. I don't it. Just not the kind of time.
I'm spending my time listening to Smartless and watching Vegas Mad on YouTube.
Hey, there you go. I love it. All right, these are the same 3 questions that I ask everyone who sits in the chair all about the state of Indiana. So first question, what's something the world needs to know about Indiana?
It's not all flat. The glaciers only went so far. I learned that from Mayor Hogsett this week. He explained to me why there's hills in the south and everything else is flat.
So the glaciers stopped around somewhere south of Indianapolis.
Just south of Indianapolis, right? And so it's not all flat. That's why there's hills and kind of stuff in Brown County and Nashville.
That's a really good point. All right. Mayor Hogsett, thank you. Yeah. Next question. What is a hidden gem in Indiana?
French Lick. French Lick, that whole Orange County, French Lick area is just, we went down there. We actually spent Thanksgiving as a family in French Lick.
It's awesome. And the history.
Yeah.
I feel like there'd be a true crime detective show to do around Al Capone
all
and
the
French Lick.
mobsters coming down there from Chicago.
Crazy. Next question. Who is a Hoosier that we need to keep on our radar? Someone who's doing big things.
Well, I can tell you from the police department standpoint, which is where I'm at, and that's Major Corey Mims. He runs our Community Engagement and Outreach Bureau. He's a young, enthusiastic man who cares about the community, and he's going to do big things in our city for our police department and our community.
Corey Mims?
Corey Mims.
Heck yeah. I love that. Yeah. Finally, to round out the episode, I was told that I needed to get a few of or at least one of your best dad jokes.
The other day, my kids told me that I didn't have all the board games. I had no clue. I torture my staff with these every single day. I stole that one from Instagram last night.
Oh, that's a good one. What is there one that's always been just a home run hitter? But it's kind of hard to force a dad joke, right?
Yeah,
it
is. I mean, especially me, I have to prepare myself. I mean, I watch and read so many of them that I sometimes forget some of the old ones. But I bought a air freshener that I can control with my mind. My wife thought it was dumb, but it makes a lot of sense if you think about it.
Yes. There it is. That's how we're gonna round out the
Dad
episode. Chief Bailey, thank you so much for coming on.
Thanks for
Thank
having
you
me.
for all the work that you're doing in our community and everyone, right?
Yeah.
You said 1,400 and
Yeah, 1,450 cops and 200 plus professional employees. They do all the work. I just get the opportunity to lead the organization.
man, it's a lot of times a thankless job. We talked about it before we kind of got rolling that it used to be really impactful and kids would want to grow up and be police officers. And I think that there's less of that now than ever probably. But I appreciate the work that you all do.
Thank you.
Every day going out there and putting your life on the line and all the patrol officers and everyone. So from one Indianapolis resident, thank you.
Appreciate it. Thanks for having me.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Get In. If you like what you heard, make sure you leave us a review wherever you listen to podcasts. This show is made possible by our friends up at Sweetwater. Whether you're looking to start a podcast or take your content to the next level, click the link in the description to see all of my gear recommendations at sweetwater.com. If you want a behind the scenes look at everything we're doing across the state, make sure you follow me on Instagram and TikTok at Nate Spangle. Thank you so much for listening and being part of what makes the Hoosier State great. We'll see you next time here on Get In.